What's the biggest act of self-sabotage you've seen? Reddit introducing ads into the comments section. Remember awards, the real ones? I loved being able to gauge the vibe of a post based on the awards. It brought so much character to the posts. I miss being able to give anonymous hug awards in grief subreddits. It'll never be the same. Why did Reddit remove them? Weren't they a solid revenue source for them? I remember when you got free random rewards to give out, that was a lot of fun. I hate how so many ads in the posts are disguised as actual posts. I report all of them as misleading and make a note to avoid that manufacturer. I wish corporations had to leave the comments sections open on their ad posts. I can tell instantly which are promoted. Something very how do you do, fellow kids about the writing style. Ads everywhere, really. Lots of websites now are so crowded with ads that they're impossible to enjoy and they crash my browser every 30 seconds, so fuck it. I stopped bothering with most of the news websites. It's either have a ridiculous amount of ads and videos, and randomly the page freezes for an ad to take up the whole screen, or to read a 3-sentence story that could actually be 1 sentence. They also block ad blockers. I don't know who still goes to these sites. A friend quit a solid job to build his dream startup and spent 3 years perfecting a website that never launched. Watching him tweak fonts and features while the bills piled up felt like watching someone dig their own hole with a teaspoon. Perfection is the enemy of good. Don't let perfect be the enemy of progress is one I'm fond of using. Also I've heard perfect is the enemy of done. Out of curiosity, do you think the original idea had legitimate merit and he just became too obsessed with details, or was the concept doomed from the start? I'm not OP, but I had an ex do exactly the same thing. His idea could have had merit since it was fairly early on in the industry, online wedding website where they'd aggregate invites, wedding shower planning, photos etc. all in one spot. They're the norm now, but he got lost in the small details and couldn't see the big picture that they needed to get an MVP out before there was too much competition. His partners also had full-time jobs so were ready to abandon the idea when it was clear it wouldn't work out. He had put all of his eggs in that basket though. He was generally not driven so he should have known that about himself. Entrepreneur is French for in between jobs. An entrepreneur would have an actual title. Will Smith slapping Chris Rock the very same night the world knew he was about to finally win his Oscar? I did not even realize he won an Oscar until this comment. Of course I remember the slap perfectly. That Oscar has been lost to history. In his acceptance speech he talked about how he was a vessel for love. Real class act. They gave him a statue of Jada to shut him up. It also led to more people finding out that he's literally a cuckold. He did really good with that. He also was asked to leave and he refused. What a champ/s. He rearranged his life to be with the woman he claimed to love. Completely. Once his new relationship with a beautiful, successful, loving woman was secure, he began cheating with the office secretary. Following his dick to the bitter end. So far, his story remains bitter. You knew my dad? LOL. Don Draper, is that you? Haha, Don Draper has nothing on men like this. Me, running out of emotional energy and making it everyone's problem except mine. Can you Ellen this more? I feel like this might be me, LOL. I'm off a breakup where, when the dust settled finally enough for me to autopsy what went wrong, it really drills to a core of just feeling overwhelmed and then checked out emotionally. That kind of led down a road of feeling every emotion like it was an attack or some personal burden to me, and I let down somebody who really needed me for emotional stability. I even grew to resent a responsibility I used to love. Pretty sure this was a major contributor to my divorce. Staying in a toxic relationship just because it felt familiar. Going through the absolute worst yet somehow missing it when you're single again? Slapping myself in the face every time. Nostalgia is a dirty little liar. Really useful psychology tidbit to know is that while negative/angry information is more attention-grabbing in the immediate, but it's strangely quicker to fade and lose its engagement in hindsight in our memories, or put another way we have a negativity bias in our attention, and a positivity bias in our memory. I recognize that person. That was me a year ago. Put up with financial disaster, disrespect, laziness, among other things, all for codependency and familiarity. Glad I finally took the really hurtful plunge to get away from it all. Messed me up good during and after. But after the heartbreak I really am better. I'm day 2 post-breakup and this made me feel a bit better. Thanks. I waking taking out from a small restaurant every night. At one point, the owner put off his career plans to keep the restaurant going. I said to him, "This restaurant is very small and it's never gotten crowded. Its prospects are limited. It's not worthwhile to make any sacrifices for it." He nodded and looked sad to hear it. He'd never heard me say anything negative before. A week later, his wife said they decided I'm right and they're closing the restaurant. I cut off my own food supply. I chuckled at your last line, but I would like to think your moment of brutal honesty saved them from years of struggle and heartache. If this was a Seinfeld episode, George and Jerry would have talked the owner into staying open and going deeper in debt just so they could have their favorite lunch. I'm Jewish, have spent time in the building which appeared in the circumcision episode, where Breitling watches, have a friend named Elaine. Hang out with one of Jerry's old HS buddies. This is the first time anyone has said something about me is the opposite of Jerry. Watched my boss throw a business in prime location with dedicated employees away because his personal life was in ruins. Alcohol and drugs were the main problem. I was the operations manager and had to leave because I couldn't depend on him for anything including payroll. We were making money, but a drink after work on Friday turned into a bender with him maybe making it into work on Tuesday. I could only do so much for so long. By chance, do you work at Sycamore Brewery? The brewery/bar space attracts a lot of this type of energy. There have been a few successful breweries in my area that have shut down due to crazy owner implosions. Sadly, no, I guess this is a common thing. With my boss, co-owner of the company, it was meth. First it was bounced paychecks, then one day he fired the whole office. Called to hire me back the next day. Sold the company before he totally destroyed it though. I offered to buy into the company if I had financial control, but he wouldn't hear it. He lived his life on the company books and that was the downfall. He replaced me with his dealer, lost the shop and owes a lot of people money, but he has gone MIA and burned most if not all the bridges in our business. That Russian Wagner Group general that stopped KMS from Moscow just to die soon after on a mysterious jet crash. It really makes you wonder what he thought was going to happen. Prigozhin lived the end of his life like he had God mode turned on. TBF, it actually seemed like he did for a couple days there. They were making ridiculous progress and then just fizzled out. I'm guessing whether they couldn't get anyone else with authority to turn on Putin, or the FSB got their hands on Prigozhin's family. I knew once he stopped before he got to Moscow and his greed took over that Putin was going to eventually kill him. He had Putin on the ropes and was literally bribed to stop the attack, and it worked. Man, I was so looking forward to that arrival. He was such a moron. Watching your best friend vape like a train, but looks at birth control as hormones and chemicals she doesn't want in her body. Like people I know who don't get vaccinated because they don't want to put stuff in their bodies, but smoke cigarettes and buy coke from unregulated, illegal dealers, that's probably cut with drain cleaner. Someone I know makes it a point to fear-monger me about my birth control and how she'd never do it, etc. BC. She doesn't want harmful stuff in her body, yet she pumps her face with unnecessary amounts of filler and Botox on the regular. Micromanaging employees who work hard, but you're such a control freak you run them off. 2 store closed, another 1 closing, and 2 fixing to be without employees. Staying in a toxic relationship and in an awful job because you didn't have anyone else and didn't know where else to go. Hey, easy there, pal. You're starting to sound a lot like me. I'm sorry that you've lived that road too. Fortunately, I eventually escaped that situation. But I'm still working through the fallout a decade plus later, so I can't quite say it's fully behind me either. Best of luck to you finding your way off of that awful road as well, if you haven't already. I stayed in a bad job for a few years longer than I should because I couldn't see myself leaving. Finally left, went back to school, changed career, and moved. Dude had a McMansion that developed a mold problem. He got pretty sick from mold-related ailments and so did his neighbors. They filed a big suit against the developer and everybody won except him, because he couldn't handle the part where you substantiate your damages and answer questions, due to bad literacy skills, and being too proud to ask for help. Bye-bye house, hello medical bills. How'd he get a McMansion if he has poor literacy skills?